Stuxnet. In 2010, a computer virus called Stuxnet was discovered by cybersecurity researchers. At first, it looked like just another complex piece of malware. But, deeper analysis revealed something far more sophisticated. Stuxnet was built to infiltrate industrial control systems and quietly manipulate how real machines operated. The malware specifically searched for control systems produced by Siemens that were operated using software called Siemens Step 7. These systems controlled programmable logic controllers, or PLCs, which manage the operation of large industrial machines in factories and critical infrastructure. Once the correct system was found, the virus quietly modified the PLC instructions that controlled the machinery in nuclear facilities. This allowed the malware to change the speed of centrifuges, which are machines designed to spin at extremely high speeds. Stuxnet forced the centrifuges to speed up and slow down in abnormal patterns, slowly putting stress on the equipment. At the same time, it intercepted the monitoring signals and sent normal readings back to the control screens, making the system appear stable to the engineers watching it. The attack is widely believed to have targeted the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran, where reports suggest that around 1,000 centrifuges were eventually damaged. Because the malware used multiple previously unknown vulnerabilities and extremely complex code, many experts believe the operation was linked to efforts associated with the United States and Israel. Escape.exe. Escape.exe is a creepypasta-style computer virus created by the YouTuber Enderman. It was designed to simulate how a system might behave if it were completely taken over by a malicious program. It didn't spread automatically and had to be downloaded by the user. Kind of like memes. When the file was first executed, the computer immediately restarted, showing a red screen instead of the usual blue. After booting up, the login screen displayed dozens of user accounts with strange names, including one called No Escape at the top. When the user logged in by typing the password death, the desktop was covered with randomly named files. Opening one revealed a message suggesting that the system had been taken over. The program also included several actions that activated on specific dates. In one case, applications on the screen began moving rapidly across the desktop, making the system impossible to use. In another case, the computer loaded normally at first, but the display soon began to distort and darken. The final action led to a complete system failure. The red background returned, followed by a message stating that the computer was done. The screen then became heavily distorted, and the computer eventually showed a corrupted blue screen before appearing unable to boot again. Although it appeared destructive, No Escape was not a real cyber attack and did not pose a real-world threat. Goggle.com. Goggle.com was originally registered in 1998, but it later became associated with more concerning behavior around 2004. It was a classic example of typo-squatting, a site designed to look like a well-known address, so that small typing mistakes could lead users to the wrong page. Because the name closely resembled Google, many users accidentally entered it into their browser. Once the site loaded, it did not behave like a normal search engine. Instead, it triggered multiple pop-up windows and redirects. At the time, systems like Windows XP were more vulnerable to automatic downloads, allowing files to be delivered and executed in the background without clear user interaction. One of the more serious aspects of the site involved its use of the WF vulnerability, which allowed certain image files to execute code on the system. By exploiting this weakness, it could run commands without the user's awareness, increasing the risk of unwanted software being installed. Among the programs associated with this behavior was a fake antivirus application known as Spy Sheriff. Once installed, it simulated a system scan and displayed warnings claiming that the computer was infected. It often requested administrative access or urged the user to purchase a full version to remove the threats. Even after removal, it could return and, in some cases, restrict or completely block internet access, making it harder for users to find a solution. Although detailed information about Goggle.com remains limited, most reports about it come from user experiences and security discussions from that period. Over time, the site gradually faded from use. In 2022, the domain was sold at auction for approximately $270,000 and is now under the control of Google. Ransomware appeared in 2017 and quickly stood out from other ransomware for an unusual reason. Instead of demanding money, the malware required something completely different: skill in a video game. Once inside a system, it encrypted many common file types, preventing the user from accessing their data. When the encryption was complete, a window appeared explaining the condition for recovery. To unlock their files, the victim had to reach 200 million points in the bullet hell game. Pt.2, undefined fantastic object. To enforce this requirement, Ransomware actively tracked the player score during gameplay. If the score was high enough, it released the encryption key and restored access to the files. Otherwise, the system remained locked, and the files stayed encrypted. Despite how it behaved, the program was never intended to function as a real ransomware attack. It was created by a Korean programmer as a joke. However, the malware was accidentally released in a functional form, allowing people to download and run it before the developer later provided a decryption tool. Although this ransomware never caused damage on the same scale as major ransomware attacks, it remains one of the strangest examples of malware behavior. CryptoLocker. In 2013, ransomware known as CryptoLocker began spreading across computers worldwide. It quickly became one of the most notorious cyber threats of the decade. Its goal was different from most malware at the time. It locked the victim's own data and demanded payment to restore access. The ransomware was often distributed through malicious email attachments and botnets. Once executed, it scanned the computer for valuable files, such as documents, images, and other commonly used formats. Instead of deleting them, it encrypted the files using strong cryptographic algorithms. After the encryption process was complete, a message appeared on the screen informing the victim that their files had been locked. The malware demanded payment, usually in Bitcoin or prepaid vouchers, in exchange for a decryption key. A countdown timer was often displayed to pressure victims into paying quickly. What made CryptoLocker especially dangerous was the strength of its encryption. Without the unique private key stored on the attacker's servers, recovering the files was nearly impossible. This meant victims had to choose between losing their data or paying the ransom. The attack spread widely across hospitals, workplaces, and personal computers before international law enforcement agencies eventually disrupted the infrastructure used to operate the malware, including the botnet that allowed the ransomware to spread. CIH. Chernobyl, also known as CIH, emerged in the late 1990s and quickly gained a reputation as one of the most destructive computer viruses of its time. Unlike many types of malware that spread quietly, CI was built with a single purpose: to cause irreversible damage. The virus spread primarily through infected software downloads and pirated programs. Once executed, it stayed hidden in memory and activated only on specific trigger dates. Most famously, April 26th, the anniversary of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster that gave the virus its name. When activated, CI attacked the computer at a very deep level. It overwrote critical parts of the hard drive, destroying essential system files and making the operating system impossible to boot. On certain systems, the virus went even further by attempting to overwrite the BIOS firmware. At the time, BIOS chips were not protected the way they are today. If the BIOS was successfully corrupted, the computer would not just crash, it would fail to start at all. In many cases, the system appeared completely dead, requiring a physical BIOS replacement or professional repair. The impact was widespread. Millions of computers were affected worldwide, causing massive data loss and costly hardware damage. Entire systems were rendered unusable in seconds, showing how destructive malware could be when it targeted the lowest layers of a computer. Over time, CI faded as operating systems improved their security, and BIOS protections became standard. However, the incident remains one of the earliest examples of malware causing serious hardware-level damage.